The world below was a seething cauldron of chaos and hostility. Ryan stood at the edge of the drop bay, his gaze fixed on the desolate planet beneath the thunderous clouds. The planet's surface, scarred by relentless warfare, was a labyrinth of jagged rock formations and deep craters, the aftermath of countless battles fought with devastating weaponry. The atmosphere was thick with ash and the remnants of burnt-out atmospheres, leaving the air heavy with the scent of scorched metal and sulfur. This was no place for life, yet somewhere down there, a group of his comrades was stranded, desperately clinging to their last hope of survival. Ryan adjusted the straps on his armor, feeling the familiar weight of his combat gear settle against his body. His HUD flickered to life, displaying the mission parameters with cold precision. The orders were simple: extract the stranded soldiers and get them off-world. But Ryan knew that nothing about this mission would be simple. The planet was deep within enemy territory, crawling with hostile forces who would stop at nothing to ensure that none of them made it out alive. His heart pounded in his chest, but it wasn't fear, no, that had been burned out of him long ago. What he felt now was something deeper, a simmering determination that had carried him through countless battles. He was going to bring his men home, no matter the cost. Commander Ryan, a voice crackled through his comms. It was Lieutenant Harris, his second in command, speaking from the cockpit of their dropship. We're approaching the drop zone. Scanners indicate heavy enemy presence in the area. We'll have to be quick. Understood, Ryan replied, his voice calm despite the tension. He turned to his team, a small but elite group of soldiers who had fought beside him through the worst of the war. Their faces were hidden behind their visors, but he could sense their resolve. They were ready, as always. Remember the mission, Ryan said, his voice carrying the weight of command. We get in, secure the targets, and get out. Stick to the plan, watch each other's backs, and we'll all make it home. A chorus of affirmatives crackled through the comms, and Ryan nodded to himself, satisfied. He gave the signal to Harris, who initiated the drop sequence. The bay doors opened with a hiss, revealing the tumultuous sky outside. Lightning crackled through the dense clouds, illuminating the twisted landscape below. The planet seemed almost alive, a beast lying in wait, ready to devour anyone who dared set foot on its surface. Go, Ryan shouted, and without hesitation he leaped out of the drop bay, his team following close behind. The wind howled around him as they plummeted toward the ground, their suits' thrusters kicking in to slow their descent. As they broke through the cloud cover, the full extent of the planet's devastation became clear. The ground was a patchwork of craters and jagged rock, with the ruins of ancient cities scattered like broken bones across the landscape. Fires burned in the distance, casting an eerie glow against the darkened sky. The air was thick with the sounds of distant explosions and the low hum of enemy machinery. It was a battlefield frozen in time, a graveyard for countless souls. Ryan's boots hit the ground with a solid thud, and he immediately dropped to one knee, scanning the area. The rest of his team landed around him, their weapons at the ready. The drop zone was clear for now, but they all knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. Harris, status report, Ryan said, his voice low as he motioned for his team to spread out and take cover. We've got a fix on the soldiers' distress signal, Harris replied, his voice tense. It's coming from a bunker about 2 clicks northeast of your position. Scans show multiple hostiles in the area, including heavy artillery. You'll need to move fast. Copy that, Ryan said, already on the move. He gestured for his team to follow, and they began making their way across the rocky terrain, sticking to the shadows to avoid detection. The ground beneath their feet was unstable, shifting with each step as if the planet itself resented their presence. As they approached the bunker, the sounds of the battlefield grew louder, the dull thuds of distant artillery punctuated by the sharp cracks of gunfire. Ryan's jaw tightened. The enemy was closing in. They had to move faster. Suddenly, a burst of plasma fire erupted from a ridge to their left, forcing the team to dive for cover. Ryan rolled behind a boulder, his rifle already up and scanning for targets. The enemy soldiers were well trained, moving with precision as they attempted to flank the team. Ambush, one of his men shouted, returning fire. The air filled with the harsh light of energy weapons as the two sides exchanged volleys. Ryan's heart raced as he assessed the situation, his mind working at a fever pitch. Fall back to the rocks, he ordered. We need to draw them into a choke point. His team moved with practiced efficiency, retreating to a narrow pass between 2 large rock formations. Ryan took point, laying down suppressive fire as the enemy soldiers pursued them. The rocks provided some cover, but the enemy was relentless, pressing their advantage with ruthless determination. As the last of his team made it through the pass, Ryan triggered a charge he had placed earlier, collapsing part of the rock formation and cutting off the enemy's advance. The explosion echoed across the battlefield, and for a moment, the only sound was the ringing in his ears. Status Ryan barked as he scanned the area for any signs of movement. "We're good," Harris replied, his voice strained. "But they'll be on us again soon. We need to keep moving." Ryan nodded, his mind already racing ahead. The bunker was close, but the enemy presence was growing thicker. They were running out of time. They moved quickly through the narrow pass, emerging into a wide clearing dominated by the entrance to an old, fortified bunker. The structure was half buried in the ground, its metal walls pockmarked and scarred by years of bombardment. The soldiers they were here to rescue were holed up inside, cut off from any means of escape. "Bunker's just ahead," Ryan said, gesturing toward the entrance. "Harris, get that door open. The rest of you cover him." Harris sprinted toward the bunker's entrance, his hands moving quickly over the control panel. The door was old, the technology ancient by modern standards, but Harris was one of the best, and within seconds, the heavy metal door creaked open. Ryan signaled his team to move in, taking up defensive positions around the entrance. Inside, the bunker was dark and musty, the air thick with the smell of rust and decay. The sounds of labored breathing reached his ears, and as his visor adjusted to the low light, he saw them 5 soldiers huddled in a corner, their faces gaunt and eyes wide with a mixture of relief and disbelief. "Commander Ryan," one of them croaked, his voice barely more than a whisper. "We didn't think anyone was coming." "We're here now," Ryan said, his tone firm but reassuring. "We're getting you out of here." The soldiers struggled to their feet, their movements sluggish from days of exhaustion and malnutrition. Ryan quickly assessed their condition: battered, bruised but alive. That was all that mattered. As his team helped the rescued soldiers to the door, Ryan's HUD flashed a warning. Enemy signatures, dozens of them, were converging on their position. "Move, move, move," Ryan shouted, ushering everyone out of the bunker. The moment they stepped outside, the sky erupted in a hail of plasma fire. The enemy had arrived in force, and they were closing in fast. "Return fire," Ryan ordered, his rifle spitting out energy bolts as he covered the retreat. His team responded with precision, laying down suppressive fire as they fell back toward the extraction point. But the enemy was relentless, their numbers overwhelming. Ryan's mind raced as he scanned the battlefield. They needed a way out, something to turn the tide in their favor. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he spotted movement, something in the shadows, just beyond the enemy's line. At first he thought it was a trick of the light, but then he saw them clearly: 2 figures moving swiftly and silently through the chaos, flanking the enemy with practiced ease. They were unlike any soldiers Ryan had seen before, their movements almost ethereal, as if they were part of the shadows themselves. "Commander, look," Harris shouted, pointing toward the figures. Ryan squinted through the smoke and ash, his heart skipping a beat as he recognized the elder who had saved so many before. The figures were not human, they were alien, their forms tall and lithe, their skin a deep, shimmering blue. They moved with a grace that was almost mesmerizing, their weapons silent but deadly as they cut through the enemy ranks with surgical precision. One of the figures, an elderly alien with a commanding presence, stepped forward, his eyes locking onto Ryan's with an intensity that was almost palpable. Despite the chaos around them, there was a calmness in the alien's gaze, a wisdom that spoke of lifetimes spent in battle. Ryan hesitated only for a moment before making a decision. "Fall back to the clearing," he ordered, leading the way toward the strange figures. As they approached, the aliens shifted their attention to the humans, their weapons lowered but still at the ready. The elderly alien stepped forward, raising a hand in a gesture of peace. His voice, when he spoke, was deep and resonant, carrying an air of authority that demanded respect. "You fight with honor," the alien said, his words laced with an accent that was foreign yet understandable. "But this battle is not yet over. Allow us to aid you." Ryan's instincts screamed caution, but there was something in the alien's eyes that made him pause. This was no enemy, this was a potential ally, one who might just tip the scales in their favor. "Who are you?" Ryan asked, keeping his tone neutral but firm. "I am Zorath," the alien replied, inclining his head slightly. "Once a leader of my people, now one of the few who remain. These are my daughters, Serafina and Xenia." He gestured to the two younger aliens flanking him, their expressions calm but watchful. Ryan's mind raced, processing this new information. Zorath and his daughters were clearly skilled fighters, and their presence here, on this desolate battlefield, was no accident. If they were offering their help, Ryan wasn't in a position to refuse. "All right," Ryan said, nodding. "We'll take any help we can get. But we need to move now." Zorath gave a brief nod of agreement, and with a fluid motion, he and his daughters moved to join the human soldiers. Together, they formed a tight formation, the humans and aliens working in unison as they fought their way through the enemy lines. Ryan led the charge, his rifle blazing as he cleared a path toward the XT-6 reaction point. Zorath and his daughters moved with deadly efficiency beside him, their weapons silent but precise as they cut down any enemy that dared cross their path. Despite the overwhelming odds, the combined force of human and alien pushed through the enemy ranks, their determination unyielding. The enemy, unprepared for such a fierce resistance, began to falter, their advance slowing under the relentless assault. Finally, the extraction point came into view, a small clearing where the dropship hovered, its engines roaring as it prepared for a quick getaway. Harris was already at the helm, the ramp lowered and waiting. "Go, go, go," Ryan shouted, urging his team and the rescued soldiers forward. They sprinted toward the ship, plasma fire whizzing past them as the enemy made one last desperate attempt to stop them. Ryan was the last to board, covering the rear as his team and the aliens scrambled up the ramp. As soon as he was inside, Harris slammed the controls, and the dropship surged upward, leaving the battlefield behind. Ryan collapsed against the bulkhead, his chest heaving as the adrenaline began to wear off. They had done it, they had made it out. But as he looked around the cramped interior of the dropship, his gaze settled on Zorath and his daughters, who stood apart from the rest of the soldiers. Zorath met his gaze, his expression unreadable. There was a moment of silence, the weight of everything that had just happened hanging heavy in the air. "Thank you," Ryan finally said, his voice low but sincere. "We wouldn't have made it without you." Zorath inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the words. "It was necessary," he replied simply. "But our paths have only just crossed, human. There is much yet to be done." Ryan nodded, understanding the unspoken message. This was far from over. The battle they had just fought was merely a prelude to something far greater, a mission that would challenge everything he thought he knew about honor, duty, and survival. And as the dropship rocketed through the atmosphere, leaving the war-torn planet behind, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a turn he could never have anticipated. The soldier in him was ready for the fight ahead, but the man wondered what price he would have to pay in the end. But whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain: he would face it head-on, with the same unyielding resolve that had carried him through the war. And now, with Zorath and his daughters by his side, he wasn't alone. The mission was far from over, and the real battle had only just begun. The aftermath of the rescue mission was a blur of activity, but it wasn't the frantic, chaotic kind that Ryan had become accustomed to during the war. Instead, it was the slow, methodical pace of debriefings, medical checkups, and the quiet, yet pervasive, fatigue that settled into the bones of soldiers after a successful operation. It was the exhaustion of survival, of making it out alive when so many others hadn't. The dropship had made its way back to the Alliance base on the nearest friendly planet, a world of lush forests and shimmering lakes, a stark contrast to the hellish landscape they had just escaped. The base itself was a sprawling complex nestled within a verdant valley, a sanctuary for soldiers in desperate need of rest and recovery. It was a place where the echoes of war were distant, muted by the tranquility of nature. As soon as they touched down, medics swarmed the ship, tending to the rescued soldiers who were in desperate need of medical attention. Ryan had watched as his comrades were taken away on stretchers, their eyes glazed with exhaustion, but filled with gratitude. They were safe now thanks to him and his team. But Ryan's thoughts were not solely on the soldiers he had saved. His mind kept drifting back to the three figures who had appeared out of the shadows during the mission: Zorath and his daughters, Serafina and Xenia. There was something about them that lingered in his thoughts, something that felt unfinished. After the debriefing, Ryan found himself in his quarters, a modest room in the officers' barracks. It was sparse, functional just like every other temporary lodging he'd inhabited throughout the war. He stripped off his armor and uniform, leaving them in a pile on the floor, and stepped into the small shower cubicle. The hot water pounded against his skin, washing away the grime and sweat of the battlefield, but it did little to clear the fog in his mind. Zorath had been a leader, that much was clear. The way he commanded respect, the way he moved with a purpose that spoke of experience and authority, it all pointed to someone who had once held a position of great power. But why was he here, on that godforsaken planet, with only his daughters by his side? And why had he risked everything to help them? These questions gnawed at Ryan as he dressed in fresh fatigues and made his way to the base's command center. He had been summoned there by the base commander, General Karis, a stern woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. Ryan had served under her command before, and he knew that she was not one to waste time on pleasantries. The command center was a hive of activity, with officers and personnel moving about with quiet efficiency. Holographic displays flickered with data, showing the ongoing peace negotiations and the state of the various fronts in the war. The end was in sight, but there was still much work to be done to secure it. Ryan was ushered into General Karis's office, a spacious room with a large window that overlooked the valley. The general was standing by the window, her hands clasped behind her back as she gazed out at the serene landscape. "Commander Ryan," she said without turning around, "I trust you've had a chance to rest." "As much as I could, Mom," Ryan replied, standing at attention. Despite his fatigue, his military discipline was ingrained too deeply to be shaken by anything less than total collapse. General Karis turned to face him, her sharp eyes studying him with the intensity of a hawk. "You and your team performed admirably on that mission. The soldiers you rescued are in good hands now, thanks to you." "Thank you, Mom," Ryan said, though his voice lacked the usual pride that would accompany such praise. His mind was still elsewhere. The general noticed, her gaze narrowing slightly. "I understand you encountered some unexpected allies during the mission." "Yes, Mom," Ryan said, nodding. "An alien named Zorath and his daughters. They helped us fend off the enemy and reach the extraction point." General Karis moved to her desk, where she tapped a few commands into the terminal. A holographic image of Zorath appeared above the desk, rotating slowly. The image captured the alien's dignified bearing, his deep-set eyes filled with a quiet wisdom. Zorath, the general said, more to herself than to Ryan. A name that was once well known in this galaxy. He was a leader of a powerful and influential family, one that held vast territories and wealth. But that was before the war. Ryan stepped closer, his curiosity piqued. "What happened?" "The war happened," General Karis said, her voice heavy with the weight of history. "Zorath's people were caught in the crossfire, their homeworld ravaged by both sides as the conflict escalated. His family, his entire race, was nearly wiped out. Those few who survived were scattered across the galaxy, their power and influence reduced to almost nothing." Ryan absorbed this information in silence. It was a story he had heard too many times during the war, a story of destruction, loss, and the cruel indifference of fate. But something about Zorath's story felt different, more personal. "Why was he on that planet?" Ryan asked. "And why help us?" General Karis sighed, turning off the hologram. "We don't know why he was there, but as for why he helped, perhaps it was simply a matter of survival. Or perhaps he saw something in you, Commander, something that reminded him of the leader he once was." Ryan frowned, not fully satisfied with the answer, but before he could press further, the general waved a hand, signaling the end of the discussion. "That's not the reason I called you here, Ryan," she said, her tone shifting to one of business. "Zorath has requested to speak with you. He's in one of the medical wings, recovering with his daughters. He's made it clear that he has something important to discuss with you." Ryan's pulse quickened. "Did he say what it was about?" "No," General Karis said, shaking her head, "but I suggest you go and find out. Whatever it is, it seems he trusts you enough to share it with you alone." Ryan nodded, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension swirling within him. He saluted the general and left her office, his mind racing with possibilities. What could Zorath possibly want with him? The medical wing was located on the eastern side of the base, a sprawling facility designed to care for the countless wounded soldiers who passed through its doors. As Ryan walked through the corridors, he saw familiar faces, men and women who had fought alongside him, now lying in beds or being tended to by medics. There were also aliens, their forms bandaged and scarred, but alive. It was a testament to the war's indiscriminate brutality that so many different species now shared the same fate. Ryan reached the room where Zorath and his daughters were being treated. A pair of guards stood outside the door, their posture relaxed but vigilant. They nodded to Ryan as he approached, recognizing him as the commander who had brought the aliens back. Inside, the room was quiet, the only sound the soft hum of medical equipment. Zorath lay on one of the beds, his tall frame covered in a thin sheet. His skin, a deep blue that shimmered in the low light, looked pale and worn. His eyes were closed, and for a moment Ryan thought he was asleep. But then Zorath's eyes opened, and he turned his head to look at Ryan. Commander Zorath said, his voice soft but steady. "I'm glad you came." Ryan stepped closer, feeling a strange mix of respect and unease. There was something about Zorath's presence that commanded attention, even in his weakened state. "You asked to see me," Ryan said, his tone respectful but direct. "Is there something I can do for you?" Zorath smiled faintly, a gesture that seemed to carry both warmth and sadness. "You've already done much for me and my daughters, Ryan. You saved us when you could have left us behind. For that, I am eternally grateful." "I couldn't have done anything else," Ryan said honestly. "Leaving you behind wasn't an option." Zorath nodded, as if he had expected no less. "Your actions speak of honor, Ryan. You are a man who values life even in the midst of war. It is a rare quality." Ryan shifted uncomfortably, unused to such praise. "I was just doing my duty." "Perhaps," Zorath said, his eyes growing distant. "But there is more to this than duty. You see, Ryan, I am old, far older than I appear. My family has ruled for generations, our legacy stretching back to the dawn of our civilization. But now, there is almost nothing left." Zorath's voice grew heavy with emotion, and Ryan could sense the depth of his loss. He couldn't imagine what it must be like to see everything you've ever known, everything you've ever loved, reduced to ashes. "My daughters are all that remains of my bloodline," Zorath continued, his voice softening. "They are strong, intelligent, and brave, but they are young, and they have much to learn. I fear that without guidance, without protection, they will be swept away by the tides of this galaxy, just as our people were." Ryan listened in silence, his heart tightening as he realized where this conversation was heading. He could see the weight of the decision that Zorath was building up to, the enormity of what he was about to ask. "Ryan," Zorath said, his eyes locking onto Ryan's with an intensity that made him shiver. "I have no heirs, no one to carry on the legacy of my family, to protect my daughters, and to safeguard what little remains of our wealth and influence. I am a dying man, and I need someone I can trust, someone with honor, strength, and compassion to take on this burden." Ryan's breath caught in his throat. He could feel the gravity of Zorath's words, the enormity of the responsibility he was being offered. "I want you to be that person," Ryan, Zorath said, his voice firm. "I want you to inherit everything, my wealth, my estate, my legacy. I want you to protect my daughters as if they were your own. I want you to carry on what I no longer can." Ryan was stunned into silence. This was not what he had expected when he had walked into this room. Inheriting a fortune, taking on the responsibility of Zorath's legacy, it was overwhelming, to say the least. He was a soldier, a man of action, not a leader of alien legacies. "Zorath." "I don't know what to say," Ryan finally managed, his voice unsteady. It's too much. I don't know if I'm the right person for this." Zorath's expression softened and he reached out, placing a hand on Ryan's arm. His touch was cool, but there was a strength in it that belied his age. "Ryan, I have lived long enough to recognize the truth in others. You are a man who can be trusted with this responsibility. My daughters have already seen it in you, and so have I." Ryan looked over at Serafina and Xenia, who were standing quietly by their father's bedside. Their expressions were calm, but there was a depth in their eyes that spoke of lives lived far beyond their years. They were beautiful, yes, but there was also an undeniable strength and intelligence in their gaze, something that drew him in despite himself. "I can't just leave the military," Ryan said, still grappling with the enormity of what was being asked of him. "I have responsibilities, a duty to my men." "I do not ask you to abandon your duty," Zorath said gently. "But when the war is over, and it will be over soon, you will need to find a new path. Let this be that path. Let this be your legacy, Ryan." Ryan felt a deep conflict within him. He had spent his entire life following orders, fighting for a cause, never once thinking about what came after. But now, for the first time, he was being asked to think beyond the war, beyond the battlefield. To think about a future he had never considered for himself. "What about your daughters?" Ryan asked, glancing at Serafina and Xenia. "What do they think about this?" Xenia, the younger of the two, stepped forward, her voice calm and clear. "We trust our father's judgment, Ryan. If he believes you are the right person to protect us and our legacy, then so do we." Serafina nodded in agreement, her eyes meeting Ryan's with a steady gaze. "We have seen enough of this galaxy to know that trust is not given lightly. You earned ours on that battlefield. We would be honored to have you take on this responsibility." Ryan was at a loss for words. This was more than he had ever asked for, more than he had ever imagined. But as he looked into their eyes, he realized that this was not just about him. This was about Zorath's legacy, about protecting what little remained of a once great family. It was about ensuring that Serafina and Xenia had a future, a chance to rebuild what had been lost. After what felt like an eternity, Ryan finally nodded, a sense of calm settling over him. "I'll do it," he said, his voice steady. "I'll take on your legacy, Zorath. I'll protect your daughters and everything that comes with them." Zorath's eyes filled with gratitude, and he squeezed Ryan's arm one last time before letting go. "Thank you, Ryan. You have given an old man peace in his final days. I know that my family's future is in good hands." Ryan felt the weight of his words, the responsibility that now rested on his shoulders. But he also felt a sense of purpose, a new direction that he hadn't realized he needed. Zorath smiled, a faint but genuine expression that softened his weary features. "There is one more thing," he said, his voice growing weaker. "In my quarters there is a key, an old, ornate key that opens the vaults beneath our estate. It holds our most precious treasures, the artifacts and knowledge of our people. Take it, Ryan, and protect it well." Ryan nodded, his mind already racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. He knew that this was only the beginning, that there would be many challenges to face, many battles to fight, not on the battlefield, but in the world of diplomacy, politics, and legacy. As Ryan left the room, the key to Zorath's vaults now in his possession, he felt the weight of his new responsibility settle over him like a mantle. But with it came a sense of determination, a resolve to honor the trust that had been placed in him. He would protect Serafina and Xenia, he would carry on Zorath's legacy, and he would do whatever it took to ensure that their family's future was one of prosperity, safety, and honor. For the first time in a long time, Ryan felt like he had something to fight for beyond the war. And as he looked out at the peaceful valley that surrounded the base, he knew that he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Because now it wasn't just about survival, it was about building something new, something that would last, and Ryan was ready to take on that challenge, no matter what it cost him. The ship carrying Ryan, Serafina, and Xenia touched down on the lush, verdant world that was to become their new home, a planet known as Viridian. The estate of Zorath's family lay nestled in the heart of this world, surrounded by ancient forests and tranquil lakes, a stark contrast to the chaos and destruction of the war-torn galaxies Ryan had left behind. As the ship descended through the thick atmosphere, the sprawling estate came into view. It was an awe-inspiring sight, even from a distance. The estate was built into the side of a mountain, its architecture blending seamlessly with the natural landscape. Towering spires rose above the treetops, their surfaces covered in intricate carvings that shimmered in the sunlight. The main structure was a grand mansion, its walls made of a stone that seemed to glow with an inner light. Surrounding the mansion were vast gardens filled with exotic plants and flowers, their colors vibrant against the backdrop of the deep green forest. Ryan stood at the viewport, his eyes taking in the grandeur of the estate. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, an oasis of beauty and tranquility in a galaxy that had known so much pain and suffering. But with that beauty came the weight of responsibility, a responsibility that now rested squarely on his shoulders. Serafina and Xenia stood beside him, their expressions a mix of pride and sadness. This was their home, the place where they had grown up, surrounded by the wealth and power of their family. But now it was a place filled with memories of what had been lost, memories that would haunt them both as they tried to rebuild their lives. The ship touched down on a landing pad near the entrance to the mansion, its engines powering down with a low hum. As the ramp lowered, Ryan took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. This was no longer just a mission or a duty, this was his life now, and he would have to learn to navigate a world that was as alien to him as any battlefield he had ever fought on. The air was cool and fresh as they stepped out of the ship, carrying with it the scent of flowers and damp earth. Birds sang in the trees, their melodic calls echoing through the forest. It was peaceful, almost unnervingly so after the constant tension of the war. Ryan's boots crunched on the gravel path as he followed Serafina and Xenia toward the mansion. The sisters walked with a quiet grace, their movements fluid and purposeful. They were dressed in long, flowing robes of deep blue and silver, the colors of their family, and their faces were calm, though Ryan could see the weight of their emotions in their eyes. As they approached the entrance, a pair of large wooden doors swung open, revealing an elderly alien woman with silver hair and deep-set eyes. She was dressed in a simple robe, her posture straight despite her age. Her face lit up with a warm smile as she saw Serafina and Xenia, her eyes glistening with tears. "Welcome home, my dear," she said, her voice trembling slightly as she stepped forward to embrace the sisters. "I feared I would never see you again." "Thank you," Serafina said softly, returning the embrace. "We're home now, and we've brought someone with us." Lena turned her gaze to Ryan, her expression one of curiosity and respect. "You must be Ryan, the human who saved our family. I've heard much about you." Ryan inclined his head in greeting. "It's an honor to meet you, Yelena. I'm sorry for all that your family has lost." Lena smiled sadly. "We have lost much, but we still have each other, and now it seems we have you as well." Ryan wasn't sure how to respond to that, so he simply nodded. He could feel the weight of the responsibility Zorath had placed on him growing heavier with each passing moment. This estate, these people, they were all under his care now, and he had to prove himself worthy of their trust. "Come," Yelena said, gesturing toward the open doors. "You must all be tired from your journey. Let's get you settled in." The interior of the mansion was just as grand as the exterior, with high ceilings, marble floors, and walls adorned with intricate tapestries and artwork. The rooms were spacious and filled with natural light, the large windows offering breathtaking views of the surrounding forest and mountains. Every detail, from the carved wooden furniture to the ornate chandeliers, spoke of a legacy that had been carefully preserved for generations. Lelena led them through the mansion, pointing out various rooms and explaining the history of the estate as they walked. There was a library filled with ancient texts and tomes, a grand dining hall with a long table that could seat dozens, and a gallery displaying artifacts and relics from their family's past. As they passed through a long corridor lined with portraits, Lena paused before one of the larger paintings. It depicted a regal-looking man with the same deep blue skin as Serafina and Xenia, his expression stern but dignified. He was dressed in elaborate robes and held a staff in one hand, a symbol of his authority. "This is Zorath," Lelena said, her voice tinged with sadness. "He was a great leader and a wise man. He did everything he could to protect his people, but the war took everything from him." Ryan studied the portrait, feeling a pang of sorrow for the man he had only known briefly. Zorath had carried the weight of an entire civilization on his shoulders, and now that burden had passed to Ryan. "He spoke highly of you," Lelena continued, turning to Ryan. "He believed that you were the one who could carry on his legacy, who could protect what remains of our family. I know this is not an easy task, but I have faith that you will do what is right." Ryan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I'll do everything I can, Lena. I won't let Zorath's legacy be forgotten." Lena smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Thank you, Ryan. I know you will." They continued their tour of the mansion, with Lena showing them to their individual quarters. Ryan's room was spacious with a large bed, a desk, and a balcony that overlooked the gardens. It was more luxurious than anything he had ever experienced, a far cry from the barracks and bunks he had grown used to during the war. As he stood on the balcony, gazing out at the peaceful landscape, Ryan felt a strange mix of emotions. He had spent so long fighting, surviving from one battle to the next, that he had never really thought about what came after. But now, as he looked out at the world that was to be his new home, he realized that this was his chance to build something new, something lasting. But it wasn't just the estate that needed to be cared for. Serafina and Xenia had lost their father, their people, and their way of life. They were strong, yes, but they were also vulnerable, and they needed someone to guide them through the challenges that lay ahead. Ryan knew that he had to be that person. He had to be more than just a soldier now. He had to be a leader, a protector, and a friend. Later that evening, After they had all had a chance to rest and refresh themselves, they gathered in the grand dining hall for their first meal together. The long table was set with fine china and silverware, and the room was filled with the warm glow of candlelight. The air was thick with the aroma of delicious food, prepared by the estate's staff, who had remained loyal to the family through all the hardships. Ryan sat at the head of the table, a position that felt both strange and natural at the same time. To his right sat Serafina, her posture elegant and poised, and to his left, Xenia, who was more relaxed, her eyes filled with a quiet curiosity as she observed Ryan. Lena and a few other members of the estate staff sat further down the table, their presence a reminder that this was not just a family meal, it was the beginning of a new chapter for everyone in this household. As they ate, the conversation was light and pleasant, with Lena recounting stories from the estate's past and Serafina and Xenia sharing memories of their childhood. Ryan listened attentively, trying to absorb as much as he could about the history and traditions of this family. He wanted to understand the legacy he was now a part of, to honor it in the way that Zorath had intended. But as the evening wore on, the conversation shifted to more serious matters. The weight of the responsibility they all shared hung in the air, unspoken but ever present. "We have much work ahead of us," Serafina said, her voice calm but determined. "The estate has been without proper leadership for too long, and there are many decisions that need to be made." "Yes," Xenia added, her tone more casual but no less serious. "There are also the external threats to consider. We may be in a peaceful corner of the galaxy, but the remnants of the war still linger. We need to ensure that we are prepared for any danger that might come our way." Ryan nodded, his mind already working through the challenges they would face. "We'll need to assess the estate's resources, both in terms of wealth and manpower. We need to secure our defenses, strengthen our alliances, and rebuild what has been lost." Lena, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "There are also the vaults, Ryan. Zorath entrusted you with the key to our family's most precious treasures. Within those vaults lies knowledge and power that could shape the future of this estate and possibly the galaxy itself." Ryan's hand instinctively went to the key that hung around his neck, a reminder of the responsibility he now carried. The vaults beneath the estate held the secrets of Zorath's people, the accumulated wisdom and artifacts of a civilization that had once been mighty and proud. What lay within those vaults could be the key to rebuilding the family's legacy, or it could bring new dangers if it fell into the wrong hands. "I'll explore the vaults," Ryan said, his voice firm. "But I won't do it alone. We need to approach this carefully with a clear plan. The knowledge in those vaults is valuable, but it's also dangerous. We need to be prepared for whatever we might find." Serafina nodded in agreement. "We'll help you, Ryan. We'll face this together." The evening continued with more discussion about their plans for the future, each of them contributing ideas and suggestions. It was a different kind of strategy meeting than Ryan was used to. There were no battle maps or tactical maneuvers, but the stakes were just as high. This was about building a future, about preserving a legacy that had almost been lost. As the night grew late, they finally retired to their rooms, the weight of their new responsibilities pressing heavily on their minds. But there was also a sense of hope, a feeling that they were on the brink of something new and important. Ryan lay in his bed, staring up at the ceiling, his mind racing with thoughts of the challenges ahead. He had spent so long fighting in a war that had seemed endless, but now he had a different kind of battle to fight, a battle to fight, a battle to protect and preserve, to build rather than destroy. And he wasn't alone. Serafina and Xenia were by his side, strong and capable, their loyalty to their family matched only by their determination to succeed. They had trusted him with their lives, their future, and their legacy. He couldn't let them down. The next morning, Ryan rose early, his military discipline kicking in even in this new, more peaceful environment. The estate was quiet in the early hours, the only sound the chirping of birds outside his window. He dressed quickly and made his way to the library, where he had arranged to meet Serafina and Xenia. The library was a vast room filled with shelves that reached up to the high ceiling, each one packed with books, scrolls, and ancient texts. A large window on one side of the room let in the soft morning light, casting a warm glow over the polished wood of the floor and furniture. Serafina and Xenia were already there, seated at a large table in the center of the room. They looked up as Ryan entered, their expressions serious but welcoming. "Good morning," Ryan said as he joined them at the table. "I hope you slept well." "As well as could be expected," Serafina replied with a small smile. "There's much on our minds, but we're ready to begin." Xenia nodded in agreement. We've been going over some of the records and archives. There's a lot to take in, but we've already found some useful information about the estate's current state and the resources at our disposal. Ryan glanced at the stacks of documents and datapads spread out on the table, feeling a sense of determination. This was just the beginning, but it was a start. They would need to work together, to combine their strengths and knowledge, if they were going to succeed. Let's get to work, Ryan said, his voice filled with resolve. We have a legacy to protect and a future to build. The hours passed quickly as they delved into the details of the estate's finances, resources, and defenses. Ryan found himself relying on Serafina and Xenia's knowledge and experience, their insights proving invaluable as they worked through the challenges ahead. It was a different kind of battle than he was used to, but it was no less important. They discussed plans for rebuilding the estate's defenses, strengthening their alliances with neighboring planets and factions, and securing the vast wealth that Zorath had left behind. There were also matters of diplomacy to consider, how to navigate the complex web of relationships and power struggles that still existed in the galaxy, even after the war. But perhaps the most important task was the exploration of the vaults beneath the estate. It was a task that weighed heavily on Ryan's mind, the key around his neck, a constant reminder of the responsibility he carried. The vaults held the secrets of a lost civilization, knowledge and artifacts that could change the course of their future or bring new dangers if they were not careful. We should begin exploring the vaults soon, Ryan said as they took a break from their work. We need to know what's down there, what we're dealing with. Serafina nodded, her expression thoughtful. The vaults are extensive, and some of the knowledge stored there is ancient, far older than even our family's records. It's possible that there are things down there that haven't been touched in centuries, maybe even millennia. Xenia leaned back in her chair, her eyes distant as she considered the implications. We'll need to be careful. There could be traps, security measures, or even creatures that were sealed away for a reason. But we'll also need to be thorough. Whatever we find could be the key to rebuilding our family's power. Ryan agreed, though he couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to step into something far more dangerous than they could anticipate. But they had no choice. This was their legacy now, and they had to protect it no matter the risks. They decided to begin the exploration the next day, giving themselves time to prepare and gather the necessary equipment. It was a task that couldn't be rushed, and they would need to approach it with caution and respect for the unknown. As the day drew to a close, Ryan found himself once again standing on the balcony of his room, looking out at the estate and the forest beyond. The sun was setting, casting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the light reflecting off the leaves and the water of the lakes. It was a beautiful sight, one that reminded him of the peace and serenity that still existed in this galaxy, despite all the destruction and pain. But that peace was fragile, and it was up to him to protect it. He had made a promise to Zorath, to Serafina, and Xenia, and he would do everything in his power to keep it. The next morning they gathered in the mansion's entrance hall, ready to begin their descent into the vaults. Ryan was dressed in his combat gear, his rifle slung over his shoulder, though he hoped it wouldn't be necessary. Serafina and Xenia were also dressed for the task, their robes replaced with more practical attire, though they still carried themselves with the grace and elegance that came naturally to them. Lilina joined them, holding a small, ancient-looking lantern that emitted a soft, warm light. "This will guide you through the darkness," she said, handing the lantern to Ryan. "It's an artifact from the vaults, one that has been passed down through our family for generations. It will light your way and protect you from harm." Ryan accepted the lantern with a nod of gratitude, feeling the weight of its history in his hands. "Thank you, Lina. We'll be careful." The entrance to the vaults was hidden in a chamber beneath the mansion, accessible only by a spiral staircase that wound deep into the earth. As they descended, the air grew cooler and the light from the lantern cast long, flickering shadows on the stone walls. The stairs seemed to go on forever, the silence only broken by the sound of their footsteps and the occasional drip of water. Finally they reached the bottom, where a large ornate door stood before them, its surface covered in ancient symbols and runes. Ryan recognized some of the symbols from the records they had studied, but others were completely unfamiliar, their meaning lost to time. "This is it," Serafina said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "The entrance to the vaults. Beyond this door lies the knowledge and treasures of our people, preserved for generations." Ryan stepped forward, the key to the vaults clutched in his hand. The key was old and heavy, its surface worn smooth by countless hands. As he inserted it into the lock, he felt a strange sensation, as if the key was alive, pulsing with a faint energy. With a deep breath, Ryan turned the key, and the door creaked open, revealing a dark passage beyond. The air that rushed out was cold and stale, carrying with it the scent of ancient stone and dust. They stepped through the door, the light from the lantern illuminating the passage ahead. The walls were lined with shelves and alcoves, each one filled with artifacts, scrolls, and objects of unknown origin. Some were clearly valuable golden statues, jeweled crowns, and weapons of exquisite craftsmanship, while others were strange and mysterious, their purpose lost to time. As they moved deeper into the vaults, Ryan felt a growing sense of unease. There was something about this place, something ancient and powerful, that seemed to watch them as they moved. It wasn't malevolent, but it was aware. Serafina and Xenia seemed to sense it too, their movements becoming more cautious as they explored the vaults. They paused frequently to examine the artifacts, their expressions thoughtful as they tried to decipher the meaning and history behind each one. "This is incredible," Xenia whispered, as she picked up a small, intricately carved box. "These objects, they're not just valuable, they're powerful. There's energy here, Ryan, energy that could be used to protect the estate, to rebuild what we've lost." Ryan nodded, though he remained cautious. "We need to be careful. Power like this can be dangerous if it's not understood. We should document everything, take our time to study it all before making any decisions." Serafina agreed. "The knowledge in these vaults could be the key to our future, but it could also bring new dangers if we're not careful. We need to approach this with respect and caution." As they continued their exploration, they came across a large, circular chamber at the heart of the vaults. In the center of the chamber stood a massive stone pedestal, upon which rested a large, ancient book. The book was bound in leather, its pages yellowed with age, and its cover was embossed with the same symbols and runes that adorned the vault's entrance. "This is it," Serafina said, her voice filled with awe. "The Book of Ancients. It contains the history and knowledge of our people, passed down through the generations. Everything we need to know is in here." Ryan approached the pedestal, his heart pounding as he reached out to touch the book. The moment his fingers brushed the cover, he felt a surge of energy, a connection to something far greater than himself. It was as if the book was alive, filled with the wisdom and power of those who had come before. "We should take it back to the mansion," Ryan said, his voice steady despite the emotions swirling within him. "We can study it there, in a place where we're safe and can take our time." Serafina and Xenia nodded in agreement, and together they carefully lifted the book from the pedestal. As they did, the chamber seemed to grow warmer, the energy within the vaults pulsing with a quiet, ancient power. They made their way back through the vaults, the weight of their discovery pressing heavily on their minds. This book, this knowledge, it was the key to their future, but it was also a responsibility unlike any other. They had to use it wisely, to honor the legacy it represented while also protecting it from those who would seek to exploit its power. As they ascended the spiral staircase and returned to the mansion, the sun was beginning to rise, casting a golden light over the estate. The world outside was peaceful, the birds singing in the trees, the air filled with the scent of flowers. But within the mansion, a new journey was just beginning. Ryan, Serafina, and Xenia now held the key to a legacy that could shape the future of their family, their estate, and perhaps even the galaxy itself. And as they gathered in the library, the Book of Ancients resting on the table before them, they knew that their lives had been forever changed. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and dangers they could only begin to imagine. But they were ready to face it, together. For now, it wasn't just about protecting a legacy, it was about building a future, one that would honor the past while embracing the possibilities of what was to come. And Ryan, once a soldier of war, was now a guardian of something far greater, a legacy of knowledge, power, and hope that would endure for generations to come. The days following the exploration of the vaults were filled with a flurry of activity. The Book of Ancients, now safely housed in the library, became the focal point of their efforts. Ryan, Serafina, and Xenia spent long hours poring over its pages, deciphering the ancient language and unraveling the secrets it contained. The book was a treasure trove of knowledge, filled with histories, philosophies, and technologies that had been lost to time. But it was also a puzzle, its meanings often obscured by metaphor and cryptic symbols that required careful interpretation. Yet, even as they immersed themselves in the work of rebuilding the estate and safeguarding Zorath's legacy, there was an undercurrent of something more, a subtle, growing tension between the three of them. It was a tension that Ryan could not ignore, though he tried to focus on the tasks at hand. The sisters, too, seemed to sense it, though they were careful not to let it interfere with their shared mission. But as the days turned into weeks, that tension became harder to ignore. It was in the way Serafina's eyes lingered on Ryan when she thought he wasn't looking, in the way Xenia's laughter seemed to brighten whenever he was near. It was in the quiet moments they shared, the unspoken understanding that had developed between them as they worked side by side. One evening, after a particularly long day of studying the Book of Ancients, Ryan found himself alone in the library. The room was dimly lit, the only light coming from the lanterns that lined the walls and the soft glow of the fire crackling in the hearth. The book lay open before him, its pages filled with the delicate script of Zoroth's people, but Ryan's mind was far from the text. He stared into the flames, his thoughts tangled and confused. He had always been a man of action, someone who thrived on the clarity of purpose that battle provided. But this was different. The emotions that had been building within him, the feelings he could no longer deny, were a battlefield of their own, one that he had no experience navigating. He cared deeply for both Serafina and Xenia. They had become more than just allies in this mission. They had become his friends, his confidants in something more that he couldn't quite define. He admired Serafina's strength and wisdom, her calm demeanor in the face of overwhelming odds. And Xenia. Xenia's lightheartedness and warmth had a way of easing the burdens he carried, her smile a balm to his weary soul. But how could he reconcile these feelings? How could he choose between them, knowing that such a choice could hurt them both? The thought of causing either of them pain was unbearable, and yet the idea of pushing his feelings aside seemed equally impossible. Lost in his thoughts, Ryan didn't hear the soft footsteps approaching until they were right beside him. He looked up to see Serafina standing at the edge of the room, her silhouette outlined by the flickering firelight. She was dressed in a simple gown, her long, dark hair flowing loosely over her shoulders. There was a quiet elegance about her, a grace that seemed to come as naturally as breathing. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, her voice soft as she stepped closer. Ryan shook his head, offering her a small smile. "No, I have a lot on my mind." Serafina nodded, her eyes searching his face as if she could see the turmoil within him. Without another word, she moved to sit beside him, her presence a comforting weight beside his. For a moment, they sat in silence, the crackling of the fire, the only sound in the room. "Ryan," she began, her voice hesitant but steady, "I've been meaning to talk to you. There's something I need to say, and I don't want to wait any longer." Ryan turned to face her, his heart beginning to pound. He could sense the seriousness in her tone, the gravity of what she was about to say. "I've been thinking a lot about you," Serafina continued, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made it impossible to look away. "About you, me and Xenia. I know this isn't easy for any of us, but I can't keep pretending that I don't feel something deep for you." Ryan's breath caught in his throat. He had suspected as much, but hearing the words spoken aloud brought the reality of the situation crashing down on him. His mind raced, searching for the right response, but before he could say anything, Serafina reached out, taking his hand in hers. "I know you care for Xenia too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I know this is complicated, but I've seen the way she looks at you, the way you look at her. I can't stand the thought of coming between you, but I also can't deny what I feel." Ryan tightened his grip on her hand, his emotions swirling in a confusing mix of guilt, affection, and longing. "Serafina, I don't know what to say. I care about you both, more than I can put into words. But I don't know how to handle this, how to make this right, without hurting either of you." Serafina squeezed his hand, her expression softening. "You don't have to choose, Ryan. That's what I'm trying to say. Xenia and I have talked about this about you. We've seen the bond that's grown between us, and we've come to a decision." Ryan's eyes widened in surprise. "A decision?" Serafina nodded, a small, tentative smile playing on her lips. "Yes, Xenia and we've agreed that we don't want to lose what we have, with each other or with you. We've decided that, if you're willing, we would like to share this bond together. Both of us with you." Ryan stared at her, his mind reeling from the implications of her words. He had never even considered such a possibility. It was so far beyond anything he had ever imagined. The idea of being with both sisters, of sharing a relationship with them in a way that was open and honest, was both exhilarating and terrifying. Are you sure? Ryan asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. I don't want to cause any conflict between you two. I care about you both too much for that. Serafina's smile grew, a warmth in her eyes that made Ryan's heart ache. We're sure, Ryan, we've spent our entire lives fighting to protect our family, our legacy, but now we want to protect what we've built together, the three of us. Xenia and I have always been close, and we trust each other completely. We know this is unconventional, but in our culture, love isn't bound by the same rules as it is in yours. We want to explore this new path together with you. Ryan's heart swelled with emotion, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and an overwhelming sense of connection to the two women who had become such an integral part of his life. He had always been a man of principles, of loyalty and honor, and the idea of being with both Serafina and Xenia without causing harm or betrayal was something he could only have dreamed of. I don't know what to say, Ryan admitted, his voice thick with emotion. I never thought something like this was possible, but if this is what you both want, if this is what makes you happy, then I'm willing to try. A weight seemed to lift from Serafina's shoulders, and she leaned in closer, her eyes filled with a deep, abiding affection. Thank you, Ryan. You have no idea how much this means to us, to me. Ryan was about to respond when a soft voice interrupted them from the doorway. You didn't think you could have this conversation without me, did you? Both Ryan and Serafina turned to see Xenia standing in the entrance to the library, her arms crossed and a playful smile on her lips. She was dressed in a similar gown to her sister's, the fabric clinging to her lithe form as she stepped into the room. Her eyes sparkled with mischief, but there was also a depth of emotion there that matched her sister's. Xenia, Serafina said, her tone both welcoming and slightly chiding. I was just about to come find you. Xenia waved her hand dismissively as she moved to join them by the fire. Oh, I know. But I thought it would be more fun to sneak in and see if Ryan was getting all flustered by your talk of feelings. Ryan chuckled, shaking his head as Xenia plopped down on the other side of him, her presence as comforting and familiar as Serafina's. You know me too well, Xenia. Xenia grinned, nudging him with her shoulder. Of course I do. That's why we're having this conversation in the first place, isn't it? Ryan looked between the two sisters, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and amazement at the bond they shared both with each other and with him. They were offering him something that went beyond the physical or romantic. They were offering him a place in their lives, in their family, in their hearts. So Xenia said, her tone growing more serious as she took Ryan's hand in hers, You're really okay with this? With us? Because if there's any hesitation, any doubt, we can talk about it. We want this to work for all of us. Ryan took a deep breath, looking from Xenia to Serafina and back again. There were so many thoughts running through his mind, so many emotions he didn't know how to fully express. But in that moment, what mattered most was the truth of what he felt. I'm more than okay with this, Ryan said, his voice steady and sincere. I care about both of you so much, and I want to be with you in whatever way that means. I want to build something real, something lasting, and I'm willing to take this journey with you, wherever it leads. The relief and joy that washed over the sisters was palpable. Xenia leaned in and kissed Ryan on the cheek, her lips warm and soft against his skin. Thank you, Ryan. I know this isn't easy, but I think we can make it work. I know we can. Serafina smiled, her eyes shining with tears that she didn't bother to hide. We've already been through so much together, Ryan. I believe that this is just the next step for us. Ryan couldn't help but smile as he pulled both sisters into a close embrace, the warmth of their bodies comforting and reassuring. The fire crackled beside them, casting a soft glow over the room as they sat together, wrapped in each other's presence. For a long time they stayed like that, just holding each other and taking comfort in the connection they shared. The world outside was filled with uncertainty, with challenges and dangers they couldn't yet foresee, but in that moment they had found something precious, something that made all the struggles and sacrifices worth it. As the fire slowly died down, and the room grew darker, Serafina finally spoke, her voice a soft murmur. We should get some rest. Tomorrow we start a new chapter in this journey. Xenia nodded, her head resting on Ryan's shoulder. Yeah, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but I'm glad we're doing it together. Ryan smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. Me too. They stood up, their movements slow and unhurried as they made their way to the door. Ryan held it open for the sisters, watching as they walked out into the dimly lit corridor. But before they could go their separate ways, Xenia turned back to him. her expression playful yet tender. "Don't think you're getting off that easy, Commander," she teased, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "We expect you to join us for breakfast tomorrow morning. No more hiding in the library with your books." Ryan chuckled, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the fire. "I'll be there, I promise." Serafina smiled, her hand resting on the doorframe as she looked back at him. "Good night, Ryan." "Good night," Ryan replied, his voice filled with emotion as he watched them disappear down the hallway. As he returned to his room, Ryan felt a sense of contentment that he hadn't known in a long time. The war had taken so much from him, had stripped him of his sense of purpose, and left him adrift in a galaxy that seemed to have no place for him. But now, for the first time, he felt like he had found a place where he truly belonged. He knew that the path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But he also knew that they would face those challenges together, as a unit, as a family. And that was something worth fighting for. As Ryan lay down in his bed, the events of the evening replaying in his mind, he felt a sense of hope that he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long time. The future was uncertain, but it was also filled with possibilities that he was ready to embrace. And as sleep finally claimed him, Ryan dreamed not of war or battle, but of a life filled with love, laughter, and the bonds of family that could withstand anything the galaxy might throw at them. The morning light filtered gently through the curtains of Ryan's room, casting a warm glow over the polished wood floor. For the first time in what felt like years, Ryan woke with a sense of peace and purpose that wasn't tinged with the usual anxiety of war or the burdens of command. Instead, he felt a quiet resolve, a readiness to face whatever challenges the day would bring. Today was not just another day, it was the beginning of a new chapter in his life, a chapter that would redefine not only his future but also the future of Serafina, Xenia, and the legacy they were all bound to protect. As promised, Ryan made his way to the dining hall for breakfast. The mansion was still and quiet at this early hour, the soft chirping of birds outside the only sound breaking the silence. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of dew-covered grass and blooming flowers from the gardens outside. It was a peaceful contrast to the tension that had filled his life for so long. When he entered the dining hall, he found Serafina and Xenia already seated at the long table, their faces lighting up when they saw him. The table was set with a simple yet elegant breakfast: fresh fruit, warm bread, and steaming cups of tea. The sisters were dressed casually, their expressions relaxed and open, a far cry from the tension and uncertainty that had defined their interactions only days before. "Good morning," Serafina greeted him, her voice soft and warm. There was a calmness in her demeanor that Ryan found reassuring, a sense that they were all finally on the same page, moving forward together. "Morning," Ryan replied, taking a seat between the two sisters. He poured himself a cup of tea, savoring the fragrant aroma. "I hope I didn't keep you waiting." "Not at all," Xenia said with a grin, her eyes twinkling with her usual mischief. "We were just enjoying the quiet before you got here to start barking orders." Ryan chuckled, shaking his head. "I'll have you know that my barking orders days are behind me. I'm a changed man." "Oh, is that so?" Xenia teased, nudging him playfully with her elbow. "We'll see how long that lasts." Serafina smiled, her hand resting lightly on Ryan's arm. "I'm glad you're here, Ryan. We have a lot to discuss, but I think we should take a moment to appreciate what we have now. It's not often we get to enjoy a peaceful morning like this." Ryan nodded, taking a sip of his tea as he looked at the two women beside him. They had become his family in every sense of the word, and the bond they shared was something he cherished deeply. The thought of what they were about to undertake, the decision they had made together, filled him with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. It was a bold, unconventional choice, one that would undoubtedly raise eyebrows and provoke controversy, but it was also a choice that felt right, one that was rooted in love, trust, and mutual respect. As they ate breakfast, they discussed their plans for the day. There were still many tasks to be done, matters of estate management, preparations for the challenges that lay ahead, but the most pressing matter was the one they had decided on the previous night: their marriage. In the quiet hours of the night, after their heartfelt conversation, Serafina, Xenia, and Ryan had come to a mutual decision. They would formalize their union, not just in the eyes of their family and friends, but in the eyes of the galaxy. It was a decision that went against tradition, that defied the norms of both human and alien cultures, but it was a decision that felt necessary. Their bond was too strong, too deep to be confined by the limitations of conventional relationships. They wanted to be together, openly and honestly, and they wanted to build a future that reflected the strength of their connection. As they finished breakfast, Serafina cleared her throat, drawing Ryan's attention. "There's something we need to discuss before we move forward," she said, her tone serious. "It's about the ceremony, about how we're going to present this to our people." Ryan set his cup down, nodding for her to continue. He had been thinking about this too, wondering how they could approach such an unconventional union in a way that would be respectful of both cultures while also staying true to their feelings. Serafina exchanged a glance with Xenia, who gave a small nod of encouragement. "In our culture, marriage is not just a union between individuals, it's a binding of legacies, a joining of families and histories. Normally a marriage like ours would be unheard of, but I believe that with the right approach, we can make it work. We'll need to gain the approval of the Council of Elders, the remaining leaders of our people. Their blessing will be crucial if we want our marriage to be recognized and accepted." Ryan frowned slightly, realizing the complexity of the situation. "How do you think they'll react to this?" "It's hard to say," Serafina admitted. "The council is made up of the most senior and respected members of our society. They're deeply traditional, but they're also pragmatic. If we can present our case in a way that shows how our union will strengthen our legacy, they might be willing to support us. It will also help that we have the Book of Ancients and the knowledge we've uncovered from the vaults. These are things that could benefit our people as a whole." Xenia leaned forward, her expression more relaxed but no less serious. "And let's not forget that our people are still recovering from the war. They're looking for hope, for something to believe in. If we can show them that our marriage is a symbol of unity and strength, it could help bring our people together, to heal the wounds that the war has left behind." Ryan considered their words, feeling the weight of the responsibility that came with this decision. It wasn't just about their personal happiness, it was about the future of their people, about how their actions would be perceived and what they could achieve together. "I understand," Ryan said finally, his voice steady. "We'll need to approach this carefully, with respect for the traditions of your people, while also being true to what we feel. I'm with you both in this, whatever it takes." Serafina and Xenia both smiled, their eyes filled with gratitude and affection. "Thank you, Ryan," Serafina said softly. "We knew we could count on you." After breakfast, they began making preparations for the journey to the central planet of their people, where the Council of Elders resided. The journey would take several days, and they would need to present themselves before the council with the utmost respect and formality. It was a daunting task, but one they were determined to undertake together. As they packed and made arrangements for the trip, Ryan couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. This was the first time he would be formally introduced to Serafina and Xenia's people, the first time he would have to prove himself not as a soldier, but as a leader, as someone who could protect and uphold their legacy. The journey to the central planet was a long and quiet one. They traveled in a sleek, elegant ship that had once belonged to Zorath, its interior lined with luxurious furnishings and advanced technology. As they sped through the stars, Ryan took the opportunity to learn more about the customs and traditions of Serafina and Xenia's people, wanting to be as prepared as possible for the upcoming meeting with the council. Serafina was an excellent teacher, patient and knowledgeable, guiding Ryan through the intricacies of their culture. She explained the significance of their rituals, the importance of family ties, and the deep reverence they held for their ancestors. Xenia, meanwhile, added her own insights, sharing stories and anecdotes that helped Ryan understand the more personal, emotional aspects of their culture. By the time they arrived at the central planet, Ryan felt more confident in his role, more certain that he could navigate the complexities of this situation with the same determination and honor he had shown on the battlefield. The central planet was a place of breathtaking beauty and grandeur, its surface covered in lush forests, sparkling lakes, and towering mountains. The capital city, where the Council of Elders resided, was a marvel of architecture, its buildings blending seamlessly with the natural landscape. The city was filled with life, its streets bustling with people of all ages, their vibrant clothing and intricate jewelry reflecting the rich culture of their world. As their ship descended toward the city, Ryan felt a sense of awe at the sight before him. This was a world that had survived countless trials, a people who had endured unimaginable hardships, yet still thrived. It was a reminder of what they were fighting for, of the legacy they were trying to preserve. When they landed, they were met by a delegation of officials, all dressed in elaborate robes and adorned with symbols of their rank and status. The officials greeted Serafina and Xenia with deep bows, their expressions respectful but curious as they took in the sight of Ryan, the human who had saved their family and now sought to join it. "Welcome, Serafina," Xenia, the leader of the delegation, said, his voice smooth and cultured. He was an older man, his hair streaked with silver, and his eyes sharp with intelligence. "We have been eagerly awaiting your arrival. The council is ready to receive you." Serafina nodded, her expression calm and composed. "Thank you, High Prefect Lorien. We are honored to be here and to present our petition before the council." The High Prefect's gaze shifted to Ryan, his expression appraising but not unkind. "And you must be Ryan, the human warrior who has earned the trust and admiration of our people. I have heard much about you." Ryan inclined his head respectfully. "Thank you, High Prefect. I am honored to be here and to stand with Serafina and Xenia." The High Prefect nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Come, the council awaits." They were led through the city, the streets lined with people who watched them with a mixture of curiosity and reverence. Ryan could feel the weight of their gazes, the expectations and questions that lay behind their eyes. It was clear that their arrival was a significant event, one that had captured the attention of the entire city. The council chamber was an imposing structure, its walls carved from a gleaming white stone that seemed to radiate light. The entrance was flanked by towering statues of the ancestors, their faces serene and wise, their presence a reminder of the legacy that the council was sworn to protect. Inside, the chamber was vast and circular, the ceiling high above decorated with intricate murals depicting the history of their people. The floor was polished to a mirror-like sheen, reflecting the light from the torches that lined the walls. In the center of the chamber stood a raised platform, upon which sat the council of elders, 10 individuals of varying ages, their expressions solemn and unreadable. As they approached the platform, Serafina, Xenia, and Ryan all knelt in a gesture of deep respect, their heads bowed before the council. It was a gesture that Ryan had learned from Serafina, one that conveyed both humility and honor. "Rise," a voice commanded, rich and resonant. It belonged to the eldest member of the council, a woman whose hair was as white as snow, her eyes as sharp as a hawk's. She wore a robe of deep blue, embroidered with silver threads that caught the light, and in her hand she held a staff of dark wood, intricately carved with ancient symbols. Serafina, Xenia, and Ryan all rose to their feet, their expressions calm and respectful as they faced the council. "We welcome you, Serafina and Xenia," the elder woman said, her voice carrying the weight of authority. "We have watched over your family for generations, and we grieve with you for the losses you endured, but we are also heartened to see that you have returned to us with hope for the future." "Thank you," Elder Serafina replied, her tone formal but sincere. "We come before you today with a request, one that we hope you will consider with open hearts and minds." The elder nodded, her gaze shifting to Ryan. "And this is the human you have chosen to stand beside you, to share in your legacy." "Yes," Xenia said, stepping forward slightly. "Ryan has proven himself to be a man of honor, courage, and compassion. He saved our lives, and in doing so, he earned our trust and our love. We wish to formalize our union with him, to join our lives and our legacies together." There was a murmur of surprise among the council members, their eyes narrowing in consideration. It was clear that this request was unprecedented, a challenge to the traditions that had governed their people for centuries. The elder woman studied Ryan closely, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of his appearance, as if she could see straight into his soul. "And you, Ryan," she said, her voice piercing the silence. "You are a human, an outsider to our ways and our customs. Yet you have been entrusted with the legacy of our people, with the care of our future. Do you truly understand the weight of this responsibility? Do you accept it willingly?" Ryan met her gaze, his expression unwavering. "I understand the responsibility, Elder, and I accept it without hesitation. I care deeply for Serafina and Xenia, and I am committed to protecting them, to honoring their legacy, and to standing by their side in whatever challenges we may face. I may be an outsider, but I am willing to learn, to respect your traditions, and to do whatever it takes to earn your trust." The elder woman's eyes softened slightly, a glimmer of approval in their depths. "You speak with conviction, Ryan, that is good, but words alone will not sway this council. You must prove your worth, your commitment to our people, and your ability to uphold the legacy that has been entrusted to you." Ryan nodded, his resolve unshaken. "I will do whatever is necessary." There was a long pause as the council members exchanged glances, their expressions thoughtful and serious. The weight of the decision they were about to make hung heavily in the air, a decision that would not only affect the lives of those standing before them, but also set a precedent for future generations. Finally, the elder woman spoke again, her voice filled with the gravity of the moment. "Very well. The council has deliberated, and we have reached a decision." Serafina, Xenia, and Ryan all held their breath, waiting for the verdict that would determine their future. "We will grant your request," the elder woman said, her voice steady. "But on one condition: Ryan must prove his commitment to our people by completing a task of great significance. This task will test his resolve, his honor, and his ability to protect our legacy. Only then will we fully recognize your union and grant you the blessing of the council." Ryan's heart pounded in his chest, but he kept his expression calm. "What is this task, Elder? What must I do?" The elder woman gestured to one of the other council members, a man with a weathered face and deep-set eyes. He stepped forward, holding a small, intricately carved box in his hands. "This box contains a map," the man explained, his voice rough but clear. "A map to a sacred site, hidden deep within the mountains of this planet. It is a place of great power, a place where our ancestors once communed with the spirits of the stars. Your task, Ryan, is to journey to this site and retrieve a relic of our people, an artifact that holds the essence of our legacy. Only by completing this task will you prove your worthiness to join our people and share in our legacy." Ryan accepted the box with a deep bow, feeling the weight of the responsibility that had just been placed on his shoulders. This was no ordinary task, it was a test, one that would determine whether he was truly worthy of the trust that Serafina, Xenia, and their people had placed in him. "I understand," Ryan said, his voice firm. "I will complete this task and return with the relic." The elder woman nodded, her expression solemn but approving. "We will await your return, Ryan. May the spirits of our ancestors guide you on your journey." With that, the council members rose from their seats, signaling the end of the audience. Serafina, Xenia, and Ryan all bowed deeply, showing their respect and gratitude before turning to leave the chamber. As they stepped outside, into the bright sunlight of the capital city, Ryan felt a mix of emotions: determination, resolve, and a hint of trepidation. The task ahead of him was daunting, but it was also an opportunity to prove himself, to show that he was worthy of the love and trust that had been placed in him. Serafina placed a hand on his arm, her touch gentle and reassuring. "You can do this, Ryan. I have no doubt." Xenia nodded, her expression filled with encouragement. "We'll be with you every step of the way. We're in this together." Ryan smiled, feeling a surge of warmth at their words. They had come this far together, and he knew that they would face whatever challenges lay ahead with the same strength and determination that had brought them here. The journey to the sacred site would be long and perilous, filled with unknown dangers and challenges, but Ryan was ready. He had faced countless battles, survived the horrors of war, and now he was ready to take on this new challenge, to prove his worth and secure a future for the family he had chosen. As they prepared for the journey, gathering supplies and making plans, Ryan couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement, a thrill at the prospect of what lay ahead. This was more than just a test, it was an adventure, a quest that would define their future and solidify their bond. And as they set out into the mountains, following the ancient map that would lead them to the sacred site, Ryan knew that whatever happened, they would face it together, as a family. The path was steep and treacherous, the air growing colder as they ascended into the higher reaches of the mountains. The terrain was rugged, the ground covered in snow and ice, with jagged cliffs and deep ravines that seemed to go on forever. But despite the challenges, they pressed on, their determination unwavering. They traveled for days, the journey testing their endurance and resolve. There were moments of doubt, moments when the path seemed too difficult, too dangerous. But they pushed through, supporting each other every step of the way. And finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the entrance to the sacred site. It was a cave, hidden behind a waterfall that cascaded down the side of the mountain, its waters freezing cold. The entrance was marked by ancient symbols carved into the rock, their meanings long forgotten but still powerful. "This is it," Serafina said, her voice filled with awe. we've made it." Ryan nodded, feeling a sense of reverence as he approached the entrance. The air inside the cave was cold and still, the walls lined with crystals that glowed with an eerie, otherworldly light. It was a place that felt alive, filled with the presence of the spirits that Serafina had spoken of. They moved deeper into the cave, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The path led them to a large chamber, its ceiling high above, covered in intricate carvings that depicted the history of their people. In the center of the chamber stood a stone pedestal, upon which rested a small, ornate box. "This must be the relic," Ryan said, approaching the pedestal. The box was old, its surface covered in dust, but it was clear that it held something of great importance. As he reached out to take the box, he felt a surge of energy, a connection to something far greater than himself. It was as if the spirits of the ancestors were watching him, guiding him. He carefully lifted the box from the pedestal, feeling its weight in his hands. It was a simple object, but Ryan knew that it held the key to their future, the proof that he was worthy of the trust that had been placed in him. With the relic in hand, they began the journey back to the capital city. The path was no less treacherous on the return journey, but there was a sense of accomplishment, of fulfillment, that made the challenges easier to bear. They had faced the unknown and come out stronger for it. When they finally returned to the capital, they were greeted by the people with cheers and applause. News of their successful journey had spread, and it was clear that they had earned the respect and admiration of Serafina and Xenia's people. The Council of Elders welcomed them back with open arms, their expressions filled with approval as Ryan presented the relic. The elder woman, who had given him the task, nodded in satisfaction, her eyes filled with a deep respect. "You have proven yourself, Ryan," she said, her voice warm and sincere. "You have earned your place among our people, and we give you our blessing." With the council's blessing, their union was formalized in a grand ceremony that was attended by the entire city. It was a celebration of love, unity, and the strength of their bond, a bond that had been tested and proven, a bond that would endure for years to come. The ceremony was held in the heart of the city, in a grand temple dedicated to the ancestors. The temple was filled with light, its walls adorned with flowers and tapestries that depicted the history of their people. The air was filled with the scent of incense, the sound of music, and the hum of voices filled with joy and excitement. Ryan stood at the front of the temple, dressed in ceremonial robes that had been crafted especially for the occasion. The robes were a deep blue, embroidered with silver and gold, the symbols of both his own heritage and the legacy he had chosen to protect. He felt a sense of pride and honor, knowing that he was about to take a step that would define the rest of his life. Serafina and Xenia entered the temple together, their presence radiating grace and beauty. They were dressed in matching gowns, the fabric shimmering in the light, their hair adorned with delicate flowers. As they walked down the aisle, the people gathered there bowed their heads in respect, acknowledging the strength and courage of the two sisters who had defied tradition to follow their hearts. When they reached the front of the temple, Ryan took their hands in his, feeling a surge of emotion as he looked into their eyes. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the moment that would bind them together as a family, as partners, as equals. The elder woman from the council, who had become a guiding figure throughout their journey, stepped forward to officiate the ceremony. Her voice was steady and strong as she spoke the words that would formalize their union, words that were ancient and filled with meaning, words that carried the weight of tradition and the promise of a new beginning. "Today we gather to witness the union of three souls," the elder woman began, her voice carrying through the temple. "A union that defies convention, that challenges the boundaries of our understanding, but that is rooted in love, trust, and mutual respect. This is not a union of convenience or necessity, but a union of choice, a choice made freely and with full understanding of the commitment it entails." Ryan felt a lump form in his throat as he listened to her words, his heart pounding with the significance of the moment. This was at the moment that would change everything, that would mark the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Ryan, Serafina, Xenia the elder woman continued, her gaze steady and filled with warmth. "You have chosen each other, and in doing so, you have chosen to build a future together, to protect and nurture the legacy that has been entrusted to you. This is a sacred bond, one that is not to be taken lightly, but one that will bring you strength, joy, and fulfillment." The elder woman then turned to Ryan, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made him feel as though she could see into the very depths of his soul. Ryan, do you pledge to honor, protect, and cherish Serafina and Xenia, to stand by their side through all challenges and triumphs, and to uphold the legacy that has been entrusted to you? Ryan's voice was steady, filled with emotion as he answered, I do. With all my heart, I pledge to honor, protect, and cherish Serafina and Xenia, to stand by their side and to uphold the legacy we share. The elder woman then turned to Serafina and Xenia, her expression filled with warmth and respect. Serafina, Xenia, do you pledge to honor, support, and love Ryan, to stand by his side through all challenges and triumphs, and to uphold the legacy that you share? Serafina and Xenia both answered in unison, their voices strong and clear. We do. With all our hearts, we pledge to honor, support, and love Ryan, to stand by his side and to uphold the legacy we share. The elder woman smiled, her eyes filled with pride and joy. Then, by the power vested in me by the council of elders and the spirits of our ancestors, I declare this union formalized. May your love and your bond be as strong as the mountains that surround us, and may your legacy endure for generations to come. There was a moment of silence, a breathless pause as the words settled over the gathered crowd, and then the temple erupted in applause and cheers. The sound was deafening, filled with joy and celebration, as the people rose to their feet to honor the union that had just been made. Ryan, Serafina, and Xenia stood together, their hands still clasped, their hearts filled with a sense of triumph and fulfillment. They had done it, they had faced the challenges, defied the odds, and emerged stronger for it. This was their moment, a moment they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. As they stepped out of the temple, into the bright sunlight of the capital city, they were greeted by a sea of people, all cheering and celebrating their union. It was a sight that filled Ryan with a deep sense of pride, a realization that they had not only succeeded in their personal quest, but had also brought hope and inspiration to their people. The celebration continued long into the night, with feasting, dancing, and music filling the streets. It was a night of joy, of love, and of unity, a night that marked the beginning of a new chapter, not only for Ryan, Serafina, and Xenia, but for their entire people. As the night wore on, Ryan found himself standing on a balcony overlooking the city, the sounds of celebration still echoing in the distance. The stars above were bright, twinkling in the clear night sky, a reminder of the vastness of the galaxy and the endless possibilities that lay ahead. Serafina and Xenia joined him on the balcony, their presence a comforting warmth beside him. They stood in silence for a moment, simply enjoying the peace of the night, the sense of accomplishment that came with knowing they had achieved something truly remarkable. This is just the beginning, Serafina said softly, her voice filled with a quiet determination. We have so much work ahead of us, so many challenges to face. But I know that we can do it, as long as we face them together. Xenia nodded, her expression filled with confidence. We've already come this far. There's nothing we can't handle. Ryan smiled, feeling a sense of contentment that he hadn't known in a long time. I couldn't have asked for better partners, better family. Whatever comes next, I'm ready to face it with you. They stood together, looking out over the city, the night filled with possibilities and the promise of a future they would build together. It was a future that would be filled with challenges, but also with love, joy, and the strength of their bond, a bond that would endure for generations to come. As the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, Ryan knew that this was the start of something truly extraordinary. They had defied the odds, overcome the obstacles, and now they were ready to face whatever the galaxy had in store for them. Together, they would protect their legacy, build a future, and leave a mark on the galaxy that would be remembered for centuries. And as they stood there watching the sunrise, they knew that this was only the beginning. The days following the grand ceremony were filled with a sense of purpose and quiet determination as Ryan, Serafina, and Xenia returned to the estate on Viridian. Their union had been celebrated across the planet, and the news had spread far beyond the capital, reaching the farthest corners of the galaxy. The people of Serafina and Xenia's race looked to them with a renewed sense of hope, and with that hope came the weight of new responsibilities. They had become symbols of unity and strength, and now it was time to fulfill the promise of their union by safeguarding and rebuilding the legacy that had been entrusted to them. The estate itself was a place of great beauty and history, but it was also a place that needed care and attention. Over the years, the estate had fallen into disrepair, its once grand halls and gardens showing signs of neglect. The war had taken its toll, and many of the estate's caretakers had been lost or scattered. But now, with Ryan, Serafina, and Xenia at the helm, there was a renewed effort to restore the estate to its former glory and to ensure that it would remain a stronghold for future generations. The first few weeks were spent assessing the state of the estate and prioritizing the most urgent repairs. Ryan, with his military background, took charge of the estate's defenses, working closely with the estate's remaining security forces to fortify the walls and secure the perimeter. He was determined to protect their home from any threats that might arise, whether they came from the remnants of the war or from new enemies that might seek to challenge their authority. Serafina focused on the estate's vast library and archives, poring over ancient texts and records to uncover the knowledge and wisdom of their ancestors. She was particularly interested in the artifacts they had retrieved from the vaults, which contained powerful relics and technologies that had been lost to time. With the help of scholars and experts, she began the painstaking work of deciphering the texts and understanding the true potential of the treasures they had uncovered. Xenia, with her natural charm and diplomatic skills, took on the role of managing the estate's relations with the neighboring planets and factions. She traveled frequently, meeting with leaders and representatives to strengthen alliances and forge new partnerships. Her goal was to ensure that the estate was not only a place of refuge and learning but also a hub of trade and culture, a place where people from all corners of the galaxy could come together to share knowledge and resources. Despite the different roles they played, Ryan, Serafina, and Xenia worked closely together, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. They met every evening to discuss their progress, share ideas, and make decisions as a united front. There were challenges, of course, unexpected obstacles and setbacks that tested their resolve, but they faced them with the same determination and resilience that had brought them together in the first place. One of the most pressing challenges they faced was the restoration of the estate's central power core, a massive structure buried deep beneath the mansion. The power core was ancient, its technology far beyond anything Ryan had ever encountered, and it had been damaged during the war. Without it, the estate's advanced systems, including its shields and communication networks, were operating at a fraction of their capacity. Ryan, along with a team of engineers and technicians, spent long hours in the underground chamber where the power core was housed, trying to understand its complex mechanisms and find a way to repair it. The chamber was a vast, echoing space, its walls lined with conduits and cables that hummed with latent energy. The power core itself was a towering structure of crystalline material, its surface etched with intricate patterns that glowed faintly in the dim light. "This thing is a work of art," one of the engineers, a grizzled man named Varn, muttered as he examined the core with a handheld scanner. "But it's also a nightmare. The technology is so advanced, it's like trying to decipher an alien language." Ryan stood beside him, his brow furrowed in concentration as he studied the core. "We have to find a way to get it fully operational. The estate's defenses depend on it, not to mention the other systems. If we can't fix it, we're leaving ourselves vulnerable." Varn nodded, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. "We'll keep at it, Commander. But it's going to take time and a lot of patience." Ryan knew that Varn was right. The power core was unlike anything he had ever seen, and it would take a combination of expertise, trial and error, and perhaps a little bit of luck to bring it back to full functionality. But he also knew that they couldn't afford to give up. The safety of the estate and the future of their people depended on it. While Ryan and his team worked on the power core, Serafina was making progress in her own area of expertise. The library, with its vast collection of texts and scrolls, was a treasure trove of knowledge. But it was also a labyrinth of information that required careful organization and analysis. Serafina had assembled a group of scholars and archivists to help her catalog the texts, and together they were uncovering secrets that had been buried for centuries. One of the most intriguing discoveries was a series of journals written by Zorath himself, chronicling his thoughts and experiences during the war. The journals provided a window into Zorath's mind, revealing the challenges he had faced, the decisions he had made, and the sacrifices he had endured to protect his people. Serafina found herself deeply moved by her father's words, and she often spent hours reading and rereading the journals, gaining new insights into his life and the legacy he had left behind. "It's amazing," Serafina said one evening as she shared her findings with Ryan and Xenia. They were sitting in the library, the soft light of the lanterns casting a warm glow over the room. Father was so much more than just a leader. He was a visionary, someone who understood the importance of preserving our culture and our knowledge, even in the face of unimaginable loss. Xenia, who was seated beside her sister, nodded in agreement. He always knew what was at stake. He wasn't just fighting for our survival, he was fighting to ensure that our people would have a future, no matter what happened. Ryan listened quietly, his heart heavy with respect for the man who had entrusted him with so much. Zorath's legacy was a powerful one, and Ryan was determined to honor it in every way he could. "We're doing everything we can to protect that legacy," he said, his voice firm. "And with what you've uncovered, Serafina, we have the knowledge we need to keep moving forward." Serafina smiled, a sense of pride and determination in her eyes. "There's still so much to learn, but I'm confident that we're on the right path. Father would be proud of what we're doing." As the weeks turned into months, the estate began to take on a new life. The gardens were restored to their former beauty, the walls and structures repaired and fortified, and the systems gradually brought back online. The people of Viridian and the surrounding planets began to see the estate as a beacon of hope and stability, a place where the knowledge and traditions of the past were being preserved for the benefit of future generations. But with this renewed sense of purpose came new challenges that tested the strength of their bond and the resolve of their leadership. One such challenge came in the form of an unexpected visitor, a representative from a powerful faction that had emerged in the aftermath of the war. The faction, known as the Syndicate, was a loose coalition of planets and systems that had banded together for mutual protection and economic gain. They were known for their aggressive tactics and their willingness to use force to achieve their goals, and they had been expanding their influence rapidly in the wake of the galaxy's instability. The representative, a tall, imposing man named Koran, arrived at the estate one afternoon, his ship touching down on the landing pad with a low hum. He was dressed in dark, ornate armor, his face partially obscured by a mask that gave him an air of mystery and menace. He was accompanied by a small retinue of guards, all of whom wore similar armor and carried weapons that glowed with a faint, ominous light.